Harmful computer games, motion pictures. Explanations by Ptaah and Billy. Harmful computer games, motion pictures and stage plays, etc. Excerpt from the 633rd Official Contact Conversation from the 25th of October, 2015. Translation by Adam de Rossini. 21st of January, 2017. Billy says you told me once that you have conducted studies of many years in regard to terrestrial films and computer games in order to research which Gewalt-based and compulsive effects arise for the human being out of war-based, anti-war-based, terrifying, horrific, criminal and felonious and also torturous, murderous and homicidal films. Can you tell me today which results you have arrived at regarding this? Ptaah says our investigations in this matter are based upon long-term studies which have still not ended, because a duration of 30 years is in place for this. We began with this in June 1987. Thus the whole thing does not end until the year 2017 and a final outcome will be given. For this purpose both the age and gender, the personality structure, problem-solving competence as well as the capability for thought and feeling control are to be observed, and also the social environment, such as parental home, concept of upbringing, friendships, acquaintanceships, and societal standing, etc. In addition, also situational factors must be included, such as work, state of consciousness, boredom, life conduct, life-forming process and life attitude, etc. Only whilst taking into consideration all these connected factors can precise cognitions and results of the studies be ascertained. Only under these and various other necessary prerequisites can precise cognitions and results be worked out. However, what had resulted in the ongoing findings of the investigations up to this point is truly frightening, because it corresponds to exactly the opposite of that which the terrestrial psychologists, etc., claim. From the whole of our very precise earth-wide and heretofore conducted studies of the earth human beings, it follows, without any doubt and absolutely clearly, that through such computer games and films, as well as through theatrical performances in the same context, the majority of the human beings who watch such films and stage plays or play such computer games, is very adversely affected. The earth human beings are very strongly affected negatively, and affected even in a form which is very badly out of the control of the good human nature in their normal consciousness activity, as well as in their world of thoughts, feelings, psyche, and in the changes of character, emotions and modes of behavior resulting from them. Consequently they compulsively begin to act according to what the computer games, films and stage plays pertain to in relation to torture, Gewalt, hate, guile, horror, war, murder, revolution, terror, sectarianism, manslaughter and coercion, and lose the sense for the effective reality. Altogether everything also triggers psychopathic and paranoid impulsations subliminally, however also right up to the acute outburst, which on the one hand can lead to mild personality disorders right up to very severe ones, and on the other hand are barely controllable or not controllable at all. Computer games of Gewalt, films of Gewalt, games of Gewalt, Gewalt in the media or in the actual reality inevitably cause aggressivity, Gewalt and coercion in many children, young ones and grown-ups. Hence it is not only children and young ones, rather there is also grown-ups who turn to Gewalt and coercion themselves due to the virtual experiencing and witnessing of Gewalt and coercion in the murderous Gewalt disseminating media of every kind, the same as when they, in acute real form and therefore in reality, go through and experience aggressivity, Gewalt and coercion themselves, or when they just have to witness something in this form. Admittedly, it is not the case that every child, every young one or grown-up human being who sees much Gewalt or plays plenty of games which use Gewalt turns into one who uses Gewalt and who is very badly out of the control of the good human nature, because still other factors play a role, which lead to aggressive, Gewalt-based and coercive Ausübungen happening. But the fact is that every single human being is affected through representations of aggression, Gewalt and coercion or direct experiences and living experiences of a similar kind and scarred in his, her inner nature. Depending upon how everything forms in the inner nature and how it is processed, aggressive forms arise from it, which are implemented to a greater or lesser extent outwardly. Thus in no form can it be spoken of that any inner and outer aggressive processes would not arise. Children, young ones and grown-ups who, via games of Gewalt, via the media or acutely directly are exposed to constant visual, indirect or acute direct living experiences and experiences of aggression, Gewalt and coercion, are extremely susceptible and, in their inner nature, build an aggressive attitude which they outwardly express through aggressive modes of behavior. The forms of behavior thereby are thousandfold and extend from a rejection or aversion right up to contempt in regard to a human being, as well as to unfriendly words, unfair insults, condemnations and modes of action. The whole thing extends even right up to aggressive false accusations and violent attacks, but also to aggressive sheer duelt with which blood can flow. Overall, the forms of duelt which arise from the whole of the aggressive, gewalt-based and coercive observations are so diverse that they cannot be described in number, because they are determined according to the inner and outer nature as well as its character and power of consciousness. However, the fact is that not one single human being remains untroubled in his, her inner nature, as well as in his, her character, in his, her consciousness and in his, her world of thoughts, feelings, psyche by experiences and living experiences in regard to any aggression, duelt and coercion, rather is affected badly, and this is expressed at the very least in mild forms of aggression and duelt and in coercion towards fellow human beings and the environment in general. This is absolutely unavoidable and contradicts all contrary assertions and representations of terrestrial psychologists and psychiatrists. The causes of the psychological processes which are involved in aggressive, duelt-based and coercive outbursts, which are minimal right up to catastrophic in a form which gets very badly out of the control of the good human nature, are thereby in no form mysterious, because both children, young ones and grown-ups learn aggression, duelt and coercion on the one hand through observation and on the other hand through the experiencing and witnessing. Thereby it is not of importance whether the observing, experiencing and witnessing takes place in artificial visual form, that is to say, through films, computer games or television, or in direct acute reality-related form, because in every case the observations, visions, experiences and living experiences are the factors through which the inner nature is influenced and formed, and the human being, be it a child, young one or grown up, learns very quickly through the observing and perceiving, whereby all mass media of every kind provide very attractive and diverse possibilities for him, her, through which he or she can observe aggression, duelt and coercion, and to these possibilities belong not only all the aggressivity promoting mass media such as television, films, journals, magazines and cinema, rather there is also radio, computer games and theatrical performances, and one of the worst media is the sport football, even if football enthusiasts are in denial about it, because in this childish game duelt prevails, just as much as in diverse motor and other sports, and the football game itself is marked by duelt, as is the case with the often riotous and destructive football fanatics and with the hooligans. If, in games of children, young ones and grown-ups, duelt is exerted and moreover this is rewarded in any form, for example, with money or free play, etc., then thereby the danger exists that the players become even more open and more tolerant towards aggression, duelt and coercion. This holds true equally for films, namely, especially when the viewers, including children, young ones and grown-ups, identify with the film heroes, and many film viewers do this subliminally, whereby they do not even perceive it consciously. The fact is that the film observers experience joy if the film hero saves the world or good human beings by killing the villain or ones who have gotten very badly out of the control of the good human nature and is rewarded for it. For the majority of the children, young ones and grown-ups, the instructions for the behavior of film heroes who use duelt are indeed hardly noticeable. However, they get entrenched in the subconsciousness of the film viewers and encourage the aggressivity. In this form the film hero is met with a really big tolerance, even when he or she manifoldly kills and murders to accomplish his, her handiwork. That thereby, in the film watchers, factors arise which are supposed to counteract the effect of the killing and murder, corresponds only to a clueless fable of the terrestrial psychologists, psychiatrists and know-it-alls. In contrast to this fraudulent assertion which is low in intelligence, by those who consider themselves as professionals in this regard, the effect of the burgeoning aggression, duelt and of the coercion at the very least exists subliminally and in a hidden part in the inner nature. Human beings, including children, young ones and grown-ups, who create or awaken aggressive tendencies in themselves through any circumstances such as computer games, football, films of duelt, stage plays, etc., or through acute real experiences and living experiences, etc., usually, or at the very least frequently, in some mild or bad form, become aggressive human beings who are out of the control of the good human nature. Children, Young ones and grown-ups who are more aggressive are not able to totally control themselves. Thus they all are not able to defend against the influence of the aggression-triggering films and stage plays, etc., which they watch and the games which they play, because they are resistant to any defense. Thereby all, or at the very least many of their social skills, if such like are existent at all, are influenced as a consequence of that which they have visually or acutely really seen, experienced or lived through. And thereby the terrible thing is that all that which was visually or acutely really experienced and living experienced is etched in the inner nature and in the memory for the long term and usually cannot be resolved, regulated and controlled again, or can be resolved, regulated and controlled again only through long-standing and intensive therapies. The Earth human being today is exposed to the public media Gewalt and the many amusement media ever longer, ever more and always stronger, and, as our widely comprehensive studies show, very many of those children, young ones and grown-ups who are exposed very strongly to the acute real Gewalt and the film-based, information-based, news-based, game-based and theatrical media Gewalt, also experience an especially large amount of Gewalt and coercion in their real environment. All sources of Gewalt and coercion together convey to the Earth human beings of all ages the illusion that the world all around is very hostile and that it can be lived in only by having conflict, murder and manslaughter and solely with war and destruction. And this opinion alone, which is irrational, confused and also cloistered and unrealistic, creates in the Earth human being defense, hate and battle readiness against anything and everything, as well as against every fellow human being who is not of the same sense, the same status, the same belief, the same race and skin color. Hence it results therefrom that aggression against all different fellow human beings arises and that they can be met only with Gewalt and coercion, and thereby the delusion prevails that the different kinds of human beings can be encountered only if a respect is gained in relation to them with Gewalt. However, if the human beings become frustrated, stressed and annoyed and they were or are still exposed to Gewalt and coercion, then it is no wonder anymore if they are inclined towards using Gewalt and coercive modes of behavior. Media Gewalt stimulates aggression, Gewalt and coercion. According to our investigations and studies, more than the majority of all Earth human beings is affected by it. Of course, the whole thing does not have an effect on everyone and also not the same effect on every human being. And not everyone who is affected also actually gets very badly out of the control of the good human nature. However, thereby, in relation to the Earth human being, only a minority can be assumed. However, the Earth human situation looks very bad when it comes to the modes of behavior which use Gewalt and to the media Gewalt. Gewalt and coercion guarantee financial success, whereby the media Gewalt is a perfect guarantor for it, because ones who have gotten very badly out of the control of the good human nature, fanatics, players and athletes of all camps, as well as spectators and writers, are attracted by it. Thus the Gewalt and the coercion of all informational media and amusement media can be used as a cheap method by making everything attractive, and the fact is that no controlling measures and no resistance can be taken against it. Effectively, likewise, it is spoken against only in a form which is of low intelligence and senselessly and also uselessly, such as in regard to the entire terrestrial politics, which is not able to create either a worldwide peace or a world unity and real freedom and harmony. Gewalt and coercion attract particular interest in the public media such as television, journals, radio and newspapers, because the media offer fictitious Gewalt and coercion to an extent that does not exist in reality. On the other hand, they present real Gewalt ideas and coercive ideas of events which by far exceed that of all in humanity, which can be shouldered in a thought-feeling-based form. The concentrated media Gewalt actually can succeed in highly increasing the bad influence on the attitudes or the modes of behavior of the film and theatre viewers, the football and other sport fanatics, etc., and also the computer gamers to such an extent that all control over that becomes lost. Through the Gewalt and the coercion promoted by the media management of all kinds, continually more concentration disorders and decreasing accomplishments of every kind emerge with the Earth human beings. However, also the increasingly escalating aggressive modes of behavior and the higher readiness to use Gewalt. The terms Gewalt and coercion are not limited only to physical Gewalt and to psyche-based coercion, because both also apply in relation to the world of thoughts, feelings, psyche, whereby the human being is driven into depressions and into a self-destructive state without hope of rescue. Every wrongly applied media Gewalt promotes the aggressivity and readiness to use Gewalt of those human beings who are swayed by it. Football, films, motorsports, boxing, computer games, combat sports and certain competitive sports, etc., in no form reduce the use of gewalt and coercion. The view of terrestrial psychologists, psychiatrists and other scientists of the same direction, that a human being becomes more peaceable in some way through the consumption of representations of gewalt, is absolutely erroneous, because to the contrary the requirement for aggression, gewalt and coercion increases subconsciously, stores itself and begins to work subliminally, in order to erupt at a suitable opportunity. The fact is also that gewalt and coercion, which are triggered via the media or through acute real factors, excite the human being in the thoughts, feelings, psyche, and in addition undoubtedly form him, her to such an extent that he or she takes pleasure in them in relation to the public media, computer games, films of gewalt, theatre of gewalt and sports of gewalt of every kind, and grows accustomed to gewalt and coercion. In this form he or she falls into a deadening towards the real gewalt and the real coercion. If the human being already exhibits an aggressive behavioral pattern from the very beginning, then the gewalt and coercion are emulated even more so when the opportunity provides itself for it. The fact is also that the earth human beings have a propensity for modes of behavior which are aggressive, which use gewalt and are coercive. Thus they also enjoy consuming aggressive computer games, films or stage plays, and engage in aggressive games as well as types of sports such as football and motorsport, boxing matches and combat sports, etc., which increase their aggressivity and lead to acts of gewalt and coercion which have gotten very badly out the control of the good human nature and are uncontrollable. Gewalt and coercion are frequently visible signs for very deep social problems which have their origin in the family circle, circle of friends and circle of acquaintances, wherefrom a very great influence is exerted. Very often psychopathic and paranoid excesses exist with the ones who use gewalt and the ones who practice coercion, whereby these pathologically conditioned sides are concealed in relation to the environment however, but erupt uncontrollably at a suitable opportunity. And precisely in this regard, due to wrong cognitions with the terrestrial studies, which are carried out by psychological and psychiatric professionals, wrong and contradictory information and findings are made which are supposed to prove that in the face of the immensely increasing dissemination of films which use gewalt and computer games, the gewalt with children, young ones and grown-ups is supposed to have declined, an assertion which corresponds to an absolutely fallible faulty assessment and one that is to be called catastrophic, which leads to the fact that all the terrible things of gewalt and coercion keep increasing instead of being radically curbed. The coercion of every kind thereby likewise is not considered and simply forgotten, alike all sports of every kind which use gewalt. The fact that from all the aggression, gewalt and coercion, rampages emerge time and again, which claim many deaths and casualties and cause very much suffering, indeed has a result that time and again, after such an act by human beings, a ban is demanded from the people and by the professionals to prohibit the glorification of gewalt, which is appreciated and hyped up through computer games, films and all kinds of combat sports and also weapons abuse, and so on. Nevertheless, gewalt and coercion continue to be upheld and promoted however, for example, through military revenge campaigns, secret service acts of terror, anti-war films and commercial combat sports, and so on and so forth. Thereby the fact also is that with earth human beings aggressions, acts of gewalt and the exercising of coercion arise solely through observations and therefore from purely visual forms of experiencing and living experiencing, which however is vehemently denied by professionals. This, as well as the truth that human beings who are aggressive, willing to use gewalt and practice coercion in regard to their fellow human beings and their feelings, sufferings, problems and pains, are completely disinterested and have fallen into a deadening. It is absolutely clear according to our studies that scenes of aggression and also scenes of battle and gewalt and coercion, which emerge in corresponding media or in the acute real life, affect the behavior of the human being negatively in general and not seldom quite maliciously and in a form which is very badly out of the control of the good human nature, namely, beginning in children through to young ones up to grown-ups. We can answer this plainly and clearly through our studies. Through the consumption of films which use gewalt, corresponding fighting games and combat sports of every kind, the readiness to use gewalt and the coercive behavior are promoted with the human being. The visual and hence cited, that is to say, observed experiences and living experiences alone, which are acquired via the media, frequently lead to deeds and actions which are real and very badly out of the control of the good human nature, even when this is denied by terrestrial professionals. because in their ignorance they are not able to recognize and understand the effective truth. Scenes of Gewalt in films and computer games and also sports of Gewalt of every kind, beginning from football right up to boxing and combat sports of every form, have a negative influence on the human being, whereby the willingness to help fellow human beings and all life forms in general plummets, namely, frequently right down to zero, and even so far that the needy are caused all the more suffering, need and pain and even worse things, a fact which is also proven by the actions of rampagers and conscienceless murderers and thugs. Our studies prove that all types of media which contain Gewalt, and also all combat sports and sporting events with which Gewalt and coercion are in play, are able to affect the real life negatively in an extremely strong form and even maliciously, and also influence the action and behavior of the human being. Gewalt and coercion in computer games, films, in stage plays and in all public media such as radio, television, newspapers and journals, and also all combat sports and combat-related matches, etc., affect the social behavior of the earth human beings absolutely negatively, right up to very badly getting out of the control of the good human nature. Even a rational and clear-thinking human being without psychological and psychiatric education, who does not deal with this matter, can plainly ascertain according to her clear rationality, that the Gewalt and the coercion conveyed through media of all kinds rub off on the human beings, deaden them and cause them to become unconcerned, and the rational one can also recognize it through aggression, Gewalt and coercion of the human being. Not only a misconception of the distress and situations results in him, her, rather there is also a delay in regard to affording help in the situations in which an assistance for the preservation of a human life is of urgent necessity. It is therefore completely erroneous and confused of the terrestrial professionals to assume, resulting from the catharsis hypothesis, that through the watching of representations of Gewalt and coercion of some kind, be it through computer games, all kinds of fighting games, combat sports or Gewalt containing acute real situations, aggressive tension could be relieved, thus reducing the readiness for aggression, Gewalt and coercion. This is more than absolutely erroneous, because this wrong thesis leads all the more to the aggressions, the Gewalt and the coercion being glorified, and the inhibition thesis is likewise wrong, which claims that represented or effectively real occurring scenes of aggression, Gewalt and coercion through some media in the case of the human beings who see, watch or observe such pictures and scenes, or the reality, above all stoke anxiety which leads to no aggressive, Gewalt choosing and coercion controlled behavior coming to bear and also not being practiced, because the contrary is the case also in this respect. The frequent confrontation with media-based and real representations of aggression, Gewalt and coercion leads to the habituation and to the emotional deadening, both with respect to the thoughts, feelings, psyche as well as in relation to Gewalt and coercion in verbal and real form. That is how far I can answer your question today. Billy says, however, this is already a quite good and comprehensive investigative cognition which you have worked out.